HelloFresh takes the guesswork and the extra hassle out of planning and preparing delicious meals for dinner. America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh gives you over 40 recipes to choose from each week. And then your farm-fresh, pre-portioned seasonal ingredients arrive at your doorstep with simple instructions to help you feel like the master chef of your kitchen. And did you know that HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% less expensive than takeout? HelloFresh has been an awesome addition to our household's dinner routine. We all get involved and cook together, following the pictured step-by-step instructions. It's a fun quality time, and the meals are delicious. Give it a try and see for yourself. Go to HelloFresh.com/50havingitall and use code 50havingitall for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, to get 50% off plus free shipping, go to HelloFresh.com/50havingitall and use code 50havingitall.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Today's episode is sponsored by Health IQ. Health IQ is an insurance company that's all about helping health-conscious people get lower rates on their life insurance. So that means if you're a vegan, vegetarian, yogi, a runner, or anyone else who lives a healthy lifestyle, then Health IQ wants to save you money. Go to healthiq.com/ALL to support the show and see if you qualify. Welcome to the Having It All podcast, the show about what it takes to live an abundant, loving life. My name is Matthew Bivens, and each week I'm helping you get out of your head so that you can truly have it all. Let's do it. What's going on, everybody? Matthew Bivens here, and welcome back to the podcast. I appreciate you joining me, whether this is your first time or your 10th time. It's great to have you here, and we're going to be talking about some great stuff in today's episode. And I feel like I've been on a theme about transparency and authenticity lately. And that's been very, very big in my life recently. And I believe it's been big for you as well, if you're tuning in right now and you're continuing to listen. So that's what we're going to get into today. We're going to talk a little bit more about transparency, and I'm going to share some stories because I've had some very transparent episodes in my life happen over the last 2 or 3 days. And there's been some great things I've learned from that, and that's what I'm going to get into today. But first, I want to share a little gratitude. Now, I absolutely love hearing from you listening. I love it when you reach out to me. I love when we can connect either through email or sometimes live in person. I love all of that. You know, it really makes this community feel like a community, because I know if you're tuning in, then you're out there playing for your own version of an abundant, loving life. And so whenever we get a chance to connect, it's a beautiful thing. This weekend, I had an opportunity to hang out with a listener. We went for a jog this past Saturday, so shout out to Tyrone. And, you know, every email that I receive from you all is a major, major deposit into my emotional bank account. And so for that, I thank you. I want to send 2 pieces of gratitude and thanks to some recent listeners who shot me an email. The first one goes to Rebecca. And Rebecca, you had tuned in to the Abundant Love episode, and you were just sending me some thanks for that. So I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking a moment out of your day to reach out to me and share with me your thoughts. That was definitely one of my, I think I actually said the most vulnerable and honest episode I've done. So it meant a lot, Rebecca, that you would listen and connect with me. And I also want to send a shout out to Cassandra. Cassandra, you listened to the episode about how to jumpstart your life when you're feeling lost, confused, and lacking motivation. And that was a huge episode for me as well, because it was a listener email, and I could absolutely relate to the individual who reached out with the initial question. And so Cassandra, I'm happy that that episode really spoke to you and resonated with you. But I'm even more happy that you reached out to me so that we can, bridge this podcast gap, as I like to say sometimes, and, create that connection. So thank you to both Rebecca and Cassandra for the emails. I appreciate them. If you want to reach out to me, if you want to say hello, give me some feedback on the show, or give me a suggestion for what you want me to talk about, because I love that. I love when you all say, hey, I have this question or this scenario, or hey, I'd love for you to touch on this topic. If you want to do any of that, then you can reach me directly in my personal email, mattcbivens@gmail.com. That's the best way to get in touch with me. And I'd love to hear from you and get to know you and start a conversation. And if you're out there and you just want to support the show, which would be fantastic, the easiest way to do that would be to subscribe. Just subscribe to the show. If you're an iTunes user or an Apple user, then you can do that on Apple Podcasts. That would be huge. You subscribing really does impact the show. It affects how Apple ranks the show and where it puts it on its, with its little algorithms. And so that means that more people can check it out. More people can discover the show. And that's what I'm about, spreading this message of abundance and love. So if you do want to support, subscribing on Apple Podcasts is the best and easiest way to do that. So thank you for that. And now I want to give a little love to my sponsor, the current sponsor of the Having It All podcast, and that's Health IQ. And, this whole thing around life insurance and that whole conversation, I was really not paying attention to at all until I had a kid, until baby Maya came into the picture. And then I started to recognize and realize maybe life insurance is something I should be looking into. And so when I was introduced to Health IQ, I was extremely happy because up until then, I really didn't find any companies that resonated with me, that really spoke to me. And, I like to work with companies that have similar values. And Health IQ is definitely that because they reward people for living a healthy lifestyle. And for them, they're able to do this and they're inspired to do this because health conscious people tend to have lower risk for things like heart disease and cancer and diabetes. And just to throw a few stats at you, 56% of Health IQ customers will save anywhere between 4 and 33% on their life insurance. So for you out there who, look at your numbers and pay attention to how much money you're spending on stuff, being able to save 4 to 33% on your monthly life insurance cost is huge. And, people have been taking notice of Health IQ and what they've been doing. They've been talked about on Forbes and CNBC and TechCrunch, and that's all awesome. HelloFresh takes the guesswork and the extra hassle out of planning and preparing delicious meals for dinner. America's #1 meal kit, HelloFresh gives you over 40 recipes to choose from each week. And then your farm-fresh, pre-portioned seasonal ingredients arrive at your doorstep with simple instructions to help you feel like the master chef of your kitchen. And did you know that HelloFresh is cheaper than grocery shopping and 25% less expensive than takeout? HelloFresh has been an awesome addition to our household's dinner routine. We all get involved and cook together, following the pictured step-by-step instructions. It's a fun quality time and the meals are delicious. Give it a try and see for yourself. Go to HelloFresh.com/50havingitall and use code 50havingitall for 50% off plus free shipping. Again, to get 50% off plus free shipping, go to HelloFresh.com/50havingitall and use code 50havingitall.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18+ terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
And so, if you're a yogi, if you're a runner, if you live a vegetarian or a vegan lifestyle, if you're a weightlifter, or if you're just a person who likes to live a well-rounded, healthy lifestyle, then I highly recommend you check out Health IQ to see whether or not they can save you some money. To learn more and get a free quote, go to healthiq.com/all. That's healthiq.com/ALL. All right, now let's jump into today's conversation. And I apologize right off the bat. They're doing some construction right outside of my office/studio. And so if you hear any beeps or anything like that, that's all that. That's what's going on. But that's what happens, right? The show must go on. So today we're talking transparency and authenticity. And there was a sequence of events that happened late last week or end of last week, last Thursday, that inspired what I'm going to get into today, what I'm going to share. And so it went like this. A week or so ago, I published the episode called Being an Abundant Lover, where I got real and shared with you the lifestyle and the love style that Sarah and I have chosen to create for ourselves. And that's called Abundant Love. And it's really a different way to view intimate sexual relationships. Viewing those intimate sexual relationships in your life as being ones for healing, empowerment, and joy. And it's an alternative context to sex that I never had until, a number of years ago, but it's really transformed my life. I'll just put it that way. It's transformed my life. And so in this episode, Sarah and I talk all about it. We talk about what it looks like for us. We talk about what it has meant for us. And really one of the biggest things for us is that we've chosen to open up our marriage to create intimate physical relationships with other people outside of our marriage. And so that's what I shared in that episode. So that was a big episode for me because I'd never talked about that in the open before. All those conversations had been behind closed doors. They'd been with the different partners that Sarah and I have created and brought into our lives. And I had never named it and I had never shared it in a very clear way on a podcast or anywhere else for that matter. And so that happened a week or so ago. And then I followed up that episode with an episode about speaking your voice and living authentically. And so those two episodes come out back to back. Now, fast forward a few days. I'm in a training session with my coach and mentor, and we're on the topic of transparency. And it really hit me because in that conversation about transparency, we were talking about what are we withholding from those people who are closest to us in our lives? What secrets do we have? What are we afraid to open up about? And what are we withholding out of fear? And so for me, I realized that I was withholding this whole abundant love portion of my life from my family, namely my mom and my dad. And I started to, I felt resistance in my body to sharing with them. I felt all sorts of justifications as to why I hadn't shared. And then when I kind of got below those layers, I recognized that I hadn't shared because sharing meant really acknowledging that person, acknowledging myself, acknowledging that I was an abundant lover, acknowledging and owning and accepting me for me. And that was huge. That was big and that was scary. So I'm in this training session, and over the course of 10 minutes, I had this sort of like sequence of events go through my mind. It was, wow, I published an Abundant Love episode. And then I followed that up with an episode about the importance of being your authentic self and speaking your voice. And then, holy shit, here I am, terrified to be authentic and speak my voice to my parents about who I really am. And then I'm like, oh my God, I have this podcast community that I'm a part of and that I've grown, which is all about abundance and all about love. And I talk so much about transparency, and holy shit, here I am telling them to be authentic and giving them permission to speak their voice, but I'm terrified of doing it myself. And so the dominoes started falling, and I thought, wow, okay, I have to do this. I have to go and talk to my family. I need to talk to my parents. And then I started to think, well, what is that going to look like? And then, my mind went down that rabbit hole, and I stopped myself because I know that I'm very mental. I can live up in my head, and I can, to put it bluntly, I can mind fuck things. So I said, oh my gosh, okay, I need to talk to my parents, and I just need to do it immediately. And it needs to happen today. So I got clear that I was going to do it today, and I resigned myself that when I got back home, I was going to call my parents, and that was the sequence of events that happened within 10 minutes. And so that's what I did. I went home, I shared my intentions with Sarah, and then a few hours later, I picked up the phone and I called my dad, and I really didn't know what I was going to tell him. And to give you a bit of context about our relationship, we had I would call it a surface level relationship for the majority of my 20s. And as I got closer to 30s, I started to open up a bit more, and I started to be a little bit more vulnerable with him. But I was still very scared of sharing with him who I am. So I get on the phone with him, and I don't really know how I'm going to start off. So I said, this is kind of awkward and uncomfortable for me to share, but I'm just going to dive into it, Dad. I'm an abundant lover, and so is Sarah. And, here's what that means. And I went on to unpack what it meant for us, and I went on to share that had been my lifestyle for the past 2 or 3 years. And I went on to share why I was so scared of telling him and why I withheld for all this time. And we ended up having, a great conversation about it. And so after that conversation wrapped, I felt amazing. I felt like this thing that had been weighing on me for years that, recently had the spotlight shined on it as to how much I was withholding had been released. And so my dad, in my mind, was going to be easier than my mom. And so a few hours later, and this, mind you, my mom was about to have a, minimally invasive heart procedure done the following day. So that factored in as to whether or not I wanted to tell her at that time. But once I got past that, that justification for continuing to live in my fears, I picked up the phone and I had the same conversation with my mom. And so I wanted to share that with you, and I want to dive into next what I learned in the course of those conversations. Because, it was really important for me. Honestly, you all, you listening right now, you were the ones who held me accountable. You held me accountable to being the person who I say I want to be, and that's a person of integrity, high character, and authenticity. And really, it was realizing that here I am sharing myself with you, and then talking about how important it is for us to be authentic and speak our voice, but then realizing that I wasn't doing that with my family. And it was the fact that I was going to hop back on the mic and share another message with you all that really made me realize, okay, I must put my money where my mouth is, really, and I must open up to my family. So I have a lot of gratitude to you for just continuing to tune in and listen, because I don't know if I didn't have that accountability in my life, if I would have done it, or if I would have done it so quickly. And so, there were a number of things that I learned from those 2 conversations with my mom and dad that I want to dive into. And the first was to not assume anything. So right now I'm reading the book, The 4 Agreements, and it's a great book. I totally recommend go pick it up. I'll put a link to it in the show notes for this episode over at havingitallpodcast.com. But one of the 4 agreements is don't make assumptions. And really what made my sharing with my parents seem so scary is because I assumed that they were going to not approve of my lifestyle, that they were going to have strong opinions against it, and that the conversation was going to be a very hard one, that it was going to be combative. And what's interesting is that my parents have never been that way in anything in my entire life. They've always been supportive. They've always been loving. They've always let me do my thing, and they've never intruded. And so it's very odd that I would have this big fear that they were going to be combative and really want to, push back against me. And I recognize that story, came from, that assumption was really my ego. It was my ego doing what the ego does and perpetuating those fears and really stringing out those fears as far as I would let my ego take them to create as big of an obstacle as I could create. Because who wants to experience confrontation? Nobody does. And so for me, the idea that there could be confrontation kept me from sharing for a long time. I just wanted to avoid it. And, the reality was that my parents showed up beautifully. The way that I knew they would, they trusted my decision making. My dad said, after I shared with him, he said, "Matt, I trust that any decision you make for your life is a well thought out decision. You're an intelligent man. You've always been. You've always been careful at the decisions you make, and so I trust that this decision to be an abundant lover is the best one for you." That's what my dad said. And my mom, my mom was really just grateful that I opened up, grateful that I would be transparent. And, her feedback was, "I hope it all works out for you and Sarah." So there wasn't any fight. There wasn't any tears. And I needed to release these assumptions and to not assume anything. So that was the first lesson that I learned. The second one is that, there is a difference between agreement and understanding. There's a big difference between agreement and understanding. And if I went into these conversations seeking agreement, then I was really setting myself up to potentially be disappointed. Because you can have understanding with a person and not agree on something. And that's been the case with my mom. And I think that my mom understood the choice. She understood some of the things that were behind the choice, even if she didn't agree with it. And I think if I'm reading into her feedback a little bit, the hoping that it works out for Sarah and I, there's a little bit of non-agreement there.
Okay, round two. Name something that's not boring.
A laundry? Ooh, a book club. Computer solitaire, huh?
Sorry, we were looking for Chumba Casino. That's right. ChumbaCasino.com has over 100 casino-style games. Join today and play for free for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. ChumbaCasino.com.
No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
With the Lucky Land Slots, you can get lucky just about anywhere.
This is your captain speaking. We've got clear runway and the weather's fine, but we're just going to circle up here a while and get lucky. No, nothing like that. It's just these cash prizes add up quick. So I suggest you sit back, keep your tray table upright, and start getting lucky.
Play for free at LuckyLandSlots.com. Are you feeling lucky? No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply. See website for details.
But the fact that we understand each other, and this actually goes back to earlier conversations I've had with my mom, where we didn't agree but we understood. The fact that I didn't step in and say, okay, I want my mom and dad to agree with me. And even if I wasn't saying that consciously, if that was what I was seeking subconsciously, this sense of agreement that that I walk away and I feel that they were saying to themselves, yeah, that's a fantastic, beautiful, healthy lifestyle. And wow, I want to adopt that lifestyle, and I see why you would. If I had that in my heart, if I had that in my intention with these conversations, then I would have been disappointed because neither of my parents behaved that way. Neither of them, said that to me. So for me, luckily, I was looking mostly for transparency. It was me calling them was mostly for me to share, for me to honor myself, for me to be authentic. And understanding was great. It wasn't necessary, but agreement certainly wasn't necessary. But walking away from the conversation, I am reminded that, there's a big difference between agreement and understanding. And so I think for anybody out there listening, it's very important to recognize the distinction between those two things and to recognize when you're stepping into a conversation or a scenario or an environment and you are wanting agreement from people versus understanding from people. So that was the second thing I learned. The third thing I learned was that when I let go of fear and attachment, I open myself up for new, amazing things to flow into my life. And I truly believe that how I show up in one area is how I show up in every area. So what I realized after having these conversations with my parents was that I was withholding and being secretive, not just to them, but in other areas of my life as well. And so opening up on this part of me and allowing myself to be vulnerable, it gave me permission to open up and be vulnerable in other areas of my life. And it impacts other areas of my life. And I've already felt those ripples. One very specific area is with my finances. So simultaneous to all this stuff happening with, my personal life, I'm also hiring a business coach. And I'm going through the process of, she sent me a questionnaire and had me fill out all of these things and share all this information with her prior to us beginning our engagement. And some of the questions had to do with my finances. It had to do with how much money I'm bringing in with my business. And before I had this honest, authentic, vulnerable conversation with my parents, I was very scared to share my financial information or my financial history with my business coach. And this is, there could be another episode on how we tend to confuse our net worth with our self-worth. But that's what I was doing. And I had some judgment around my numbers, feeling like they were too low or that my numbers were reflective of who I was as a person. And so initially, I didn't want to share all of my finances. Or if I was going to share how much revenue I brought in the past 6 months or how much revenue I brought in the past, last year, it was going to be with a caveat. Well, this is just how much I brought in. But, my wife brought in this much and our other ventures brought in that much. It was fear and it was scarcity that was showing up. But now, since I've had this open and honest and vulnerable conversation with my family, I went back to that same questionnaire that my coach had given me. And because I had practiced, being open and letting go and not being so attached and transforming that fear into love, transforming that scarcity into abundance, now I am so much more open to sharing with my business coach. That relationship has shifted, and it's incredible how stark the shift has been and how fast it has been. Literally 10 days ago, I was feeling very scarce and I wanted to withhold. And now this past weekend is when I went back to the questionnaire and worked on it again, and I'm laying out everything. Here's where all my revenue came from in the past 6 months, every penny. Because I recognize that as I let go of that fear and that attachment, as I practice opening up and sharing, other things open up in my life. other channels open up, and I can be more authentic. I can be myself, and I can stop pretending. I can stop hiding behind fear. I can stop hiding behind scarcity. And so that was a huge, huge lesson for me. And I'm quite frankly very excited to see how those ripples continue to move out and to touch other areas of my life. And sort of related to that, the fourth thing I learned was that, this is obvious, like sharing your secrets, letting go of that withhold, it relieves you of emotional weight. And oh my gosh, I felt so light after I had that first conversation with my dad. Honestly, I felt lighter after I made the decision for myself that morning that I was going to have the conversations with my parents. Once I decided for myself that this was going to happen, it was as if it already had happened in a way. And the weight started to lift. And that was incredible. I hadn't actually taken, that step. I hadn't actually picked up the phone yet, but in my mind and in my heart, it was going to happen. And so I already started to feel that emotional weight. And then when I talked to my father, I felt empowered. Oh my God, I can do this. Okay, all right, I can do this. And then after I got off the phone with my mom, I just felt at peace. I felt a supreme sense of peace. And mixed in with that peace was confidence. That you know what? I can do this. I can look at my fears and I can walk through them. And that there is no fear, there is no amount of scarcity, there is no amount of discomfort that I cannot survive and thrive with. And that was huge. That was huge. And, I walk away recognizing for myself that the less hiding that I do, the more free I truly am. And the final lesson I learned was that being transparent and being authentic means that I'm honoring myself. That I'm truly honoring myself. And I always, 100% of the time, win when I'm honoring myself. And so, I'm in this space now, and there's more people who I want to share this with. I have 2 sisters, and I want to talk to them about who I am, who their brother is, and open up. And I've got friends. Oh man, I've got friends that I've had since my oldest friend I've had since I was 11 or 12, and I've been withholding. So there will be more conversations, but the ones with my parents were the conversations that I was most scared of. And so, like I said at the top of the episode, I feel like I've been on a transparency and authenticity kick the past several weeks. And there's no coincidence in that. And so for you listening, if you're right now in a space where there's just something that you've been withholding, there's some secret that you've been really clinging to, and if your ego has created all of this fear around sharing that secret, around letting go, my hope for you is, well, you know what? I'm not even gonna place hope. I'm simply going to hold the space. Hold the space, because I am no different from you. And because I am able to overcome those things, it means you can as well. And because you can overcome and you can step in to your most awesome, amazing self, it means that I can do the same also. We truly are connected, and we're mirrors for one another, and we feed off one another, and we bounce things back and forth. We bounce that energy between one another. And so when I win, when I level up, you do as well. And so hopefully this episode, you can see that there are some amazing, amazing things on the other side of no longer withholding, on the other side of transparency, on the other side of authenticity. And that honoring yourself and being true to yourself is the greatest source and the greatest mode of self-love. And is one of the most, I was going to say the most biggest, one of the most significant deposits you can make into your own emotional bank account. And when we do that, when we're able to fill ourselves up, then we recognize that our sense of peace, our sense of well-being, our sense of approval or acceptance doesn't come from our parents or our friends or our peers or our mentors or our teachers. It comes from within. It comes from ourselves. And so when you begin to accept and approve of and celebrate yourself exactly the way you are, then not only will you be uplifted, but other people will begin to accept and approve and celebrate you as well. Because that's the energy you're putting out there. And what's beautiful is that even if they don't, that's still fine. Because you are giving yourself permission to live your life, to be who you are. And that's something that I'm learning. I'm not at that end space. I'm not at the finish line saying, this is what it's like, and come join me. It's like I'm learning this right now because this is happening in real time. It's April 2nd, 2018 as I record this. It was 3 days ago when I had those conversations with my parents. This stuff is happening in my life in real time. And the beauty of what we're doing here at the Having It All podcast is that there's so many breakthroughs that are happening in real time. As I share what I'm going through, as you share what you're going through, as I become inspired by who you're being in your examples and vice versa. And so, man, I'm just so grateful to you for your example and for you truly being a mirror, because I see myself in you when we connect, when we have conversations, when you reach out. I see myself in you and what you're going through and what you're experiencing, the great things and the not so great things. And so, I am a mirror for you as well. So everything that I share in this podcast, everything I've shared in this episode is 100% yours as well. And so I'm very, very excited to see what comes from this conversation. And if you want to share with me where you've been withholding, I'm happy to be that first person you want to share it with, because in so many ways, you all have been the first people that I've shared with. So hit me up, mattcbivens@gmail.com. Share with me your breakdowns around this, your breakthroughs around this, and let's just keep pushing this whole thing forward, pushing forward this conversation of being abundant people, of being loving people, and creating these abundant, loving lives for ourselves. So my name is Matthew Bivens. I love you, and here is to you having it all. Quick note about the Having It All podcast. I am not a doctor nor a licensed therapist. I'm a guy with a story and a passion for conscious conversation. My thoughts, opinions, and beliefs are my own. So please consult with your doctor or healthcare provider regarding any questions or issues you have related to your personal, physical, or mental health.
Looking for a new career? Welcome to Do HVAC Training Service Center in North Charleston. Enroll today in our comprehensive HVAC training hands-on field experience-based program, covering troubleshooting, maintenance, installation, and more on various HVAC systems and ductwork. We offer EPA and NAEP preparation and testing, along with various certifications. Enjoy payment options. Achieve certification in under 5 months. Enroll now for your new journey of skill development and career advancement. Log on to dewhvactrainingsc.com to inquire.